I built her a house with my own money, my retirement savings, my future. Then she moved her ex-boyfriend into the bedroom I paid for, the kitchen I designed, the life I thought we were building together. I'm 71 years old. I came to the Philippines looking for peace. Instead, I learned what it feels like to be used by someone you loved. I'm standing in front of the house right now. Blue trim, concrete walls, small garden with bougainvillea climbing up the side. Cost me 62,000 Australian dollars. Nearly half of everything I'd saved in 40 years of working as an electrician. The key is still warm in my hand. I just gave it to Gina. She's crying. Her father, Mang Ernie, is smiling, nodding, saying something in Cebuano I don't understand, but I understand the gratitude in his eyes. I understand Gina's arms around my neck. I understand her whisper in my ear. Thank you, Byron. You saved my family. And I believe her. God help me. I believe every word. I met Gina 18 months ago. I was still in Gold Coast, still waking up reaching for Margaret's side of the bed, still forgetting she was gone. 3 years she'd been gone, and I still set 2 mugs out for morning tea. My daughter told me I needed to get out more, meet people, try living again. So I downloaded one of those dating apps. Felt ridiculous doing it at 71. But loneliness does strange things to a man. Gina's profile was simple. Her smile wasn't. She had this way of looking at the camera like she was looking right through the screen into you. 27 years old, from Negros Occidental, worked at a sari-sari store. Her English was broken but sweet. Hello, sir. You have kind face. I hope we can be friends. I almost didn't reply. What would a 27-year-old woman want with a man my age? But I was lonely, and she seemed genuine, so I sent a message back. That was the beginning. We talked every day. Video calls at night, my mourning. She'd show me her neighborhood, the street vendors, the jeepneys going past. I'd show her the beach near my flat, the pelicans, the surfers. She laughed at my attempts to learn Tagalog. You sound like my Lolo, she'd say, giggling. But she was patient. She taught me phrases, magandang umaga, mahal kita, good morning, I love you. I started sending her money about 3 months in. Not much at first, $50 here, $100 there. She never asked directly. She'd just mention things in passing. My father is sick, we need medicine. The store owner is cutting my hours. We have no food this week. What was I supposed to do? Let her starve? I'm not that kind of man. Besides, it felt good to be needed again. Margaret never needed me for money. She had her own career, her own accounts. This was different. Gina needed me, and God, I needed to be needed. After 6 months of video calls and daily messages, I told her I wanted to visit. She cried, actually cried. Really? You want to see me? Of course I do, I said. I want to see if this is real. It is real, Byron. I promise you. It is real. I flew into Bacolod on a Tuesday morning. The heat hit me like a wall when I stepped off the plane. I'd been to warm places before, but this was different. Thick. Heavy. I was sweating through my shirt before I even reached immigration. But then I saw her, standing by the arrivals gate with a bouquet of sampaguita flowers, white and sweet-smelling. She was smaller than I'd imagined, more delicate. When she hugged me, I felt her trembling. I can't believe you're here, she whispered. I can't believe you're real. I stayed for 3 weeks that first trip, met her family, her father Mang Ernie, who gripped my hand with both of his and said, Salamat, Salamat, over and over. Her younger sister Lita, who was shy but smiled whenever I looked her way. They lived in a small house with bamboo walls and a tin roof. 6 people in 2 rooms. I could see the strain on their faces, the worry about where the next meal would come from, and I could see how much they loved Gina, how much they depended on her. On the last night of that trip, Gina and I sat on the beach in Sipalay. The sun was setting. She held my hand. Byron, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think we have a future? You and me? I looked at her, really looked at her. She was 44 years younger than me. I knew what people would think. I knew what my daughter would say if she ever found out. But in that moment, with her hand in mine and the ocean in front of us, I didn't care. I think we could, I said. If you want that, she nodded. Started crying again. I want that. I want a life with you. But Byron, my family, they need help. I can't leave them with nothing. What if we built something here? I said. The idea came out before I'd even thought it through. A house, for you and your family, so they're taken care of, so you don't have to worry. Her eyes went wide. You would do that? I would do that. She kissed me. It was the first time she'd kissed me like that. Like she meant it. Like I wasn't just a lonely old man she was humoring. You are the best man I have ever met, she said, and I believed her. I went back to Australia and started the process. Found a contractor through an expat Facebook group, sent money in installments, watched the progress through photos Gina sent me, foundation poured, walls going up, roof on, paint, furniture. Every update made my chest swell. I was building something, a future, a home, a life with someone who saw me as more than just the ghost of who I used to be. It took 8 months, 62,000 Australian dollars. But when I flew back and saw it finished, saw Gina standing in the doorway with tears streaming down her face, it felt worth every cent. I can't believe this is ours, she said. I can't believe you did this for me. For us, I corrected. She looked up at me, nodded. For us, I handed her the key. She opened the door. We walked in together. Mang Ernie was already inside, admiring the kitchen, running his hand along the counter. Lita was in the bedroom, bouncing on the mattress like a child. Gina turned to me, put her hand on my chest. Thank you, Byron, she whispered. You saved my family. And standing there in that house, in the life I'd built, I felt something I hadn't felt since Margaret died. I felt like I mattered. Like I had a purpose. Like I was home. The first 2 weeks living in the house were everything I'd imagined. I'd wake up to the sound of roosters and the smell of coffee brewing. Gina would already be in the kitchen, humming while she cooked. Magandang umaga, mahal, she'd say, sliding a plate of eggs and rice in front of me. Good morning, love. We'd eat breakfast together on the little patio I'd had built, watching the neighbors go about their morning routines. Afternoons, we'd walk through the barangay. She'd introduce me to everyone. This is Byron, my partner, she'd say proudly in English, then switch to rapid Cebuano. I couldn't follow most of it, but I caught my name and saw the respectful nods. I liked how she called me, her partner. Not boyfriend, not sponsor, partner, like we were equals. She cooked my favorite dishes, adobo with extra garlic, the way I'd told her I liked it during one of our video calls a year ago, she remembered. She'd rub my shoulders when I complained about the heat. She'd laugh at my terrible Cebuano pronunciation. At night, we'd lie in bed and she'd tell me stories about growing up here, about her dreams of someday opening her own store, maybe a small restaurant. With you, I can dream these things, she'd say. Before, I could only survive. I was happy. For the first time in 3 years, I was genuinely happy. But then small things started to shift. Little cracks in the foundation I'd built my hope on. Her phone started buzzing more, constantly, during meals, during our walks, in the middle of the night. She'd glance at it, then stand up. I need to take this. It's my cousin. Or, it's Lita. 1 second. She'd step outside, close the door, and I'd hear her voice through the window. Low, tense, speaking in Cebuano. Sometimes she'd laugh, sometimes she'd argue. When she'd come back in, I'd ask, "Everything okay?" Yes, just family things. Anything I can help with? No, Mahal, don't worry. But I was starting to worry. Money was disappearing faster than I'd expected. I'd budgeted about 800 Australian dollars a month for expenses. Food, utilities, transportation. But every week, Gina would come to me with something new. Byron, we need to fix the water pump. The electric bill is higher than we thought. My father needs medicine again. Lita needs money for school supplies. I'd hand over the cash. What else could I do? These were legitimate expenses, This was part of supporting a family. But 800 became 1,000, then 1,200. My pension wasn't infinite. I'd spent over half my savings on the house. I couldn't keep bleeding money like this. When I tried to talk to her about it, she'd get defensive. You said you wanted to help my family. I do, Gina. I just need to understand where it's all going. Are you saying I'm lying to you? No, I'm just... You think I'm using you for money? Her eyes would fill with tears. And just like that, I'd be the bad guy. The selfish foreigner who didn't understand how hard life was here. I'm sorry, I'd say, feeling like an ass. I didn't mean it like that. She'd soften. Touch my face. I know, Mahal. I know you're generous. That's why I love you. And I'd let it go, because hearing her say she loved me was worth more than the money. One evening, I was doing laundry. We didn't have a machine, so I was hand-washing in a bucket outside. I pulled out a shirt I didn't recognize. Men's shirt. Large. Definitely not mine. I brought it inside. Gina was watching TV. Whose is this? I asked, holding it up. She barely glanced at it. Oh, that's my brother's. He stayed here last week when you went to Bacolod. You didn't mention he stayed over, didn't I? I thought I did. She turned back to the TV. He just needed a place for one night. His wife kicked him out. I stood there, holding the shirt. Something about her tone felt wrong. Too casual. Like she'd practiced the answer. I didn't know you had a brother. I have 3 brothers, Byron. I told you this. Had she? I couldn't remember. My memory wasn't what it used to be. Maybe she had mentioned it, and I'd forgotten. I put the shirt in the wash basket and didn't bring it up again, but the unease stayed. At night, I started noticing she was less present. During intimacy, her mind seemed somewhere else. She'd go through the motions, but the warmth was gone. The connection we'd had those first few weeks had evaporated. Are you okay? I asked her one night. You seem distant. I'm just tired, Byron. Is it something I did? No. I'm just tired. Can we not talk right now? So we didn't talk. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe, wondering when things had changed, wondering if they'd ever really been the way I thought they were. Lita came by one afternoon when Gina was out. She seemed nervous, kept glancing at the door like she was afraid of being caught. Hi, Lita, I said, smiling. Gina's not here right now. She went to the market. I know. I wanted to talk to you. My stomach tightened. Is everything okay? She hesitated, looked down at her hands. Byron, you are a good man. Thank you. My sister, she is. She has a good heart. But, she stopped, bit her lip. But, what? Nothing. I just wanted to say thank you for helping our family. She left before I could press her further. That night I asked Gina, Is Lita okay? She seemed upset. She's fine. Why? She came by today, said something strange. Gina's expression hardened. What did she say? Nothing specific. Just that you have a good heart, but then she stopped herself. Gina grabbed her phone, started typing furiously. She needs to mind her own business. Gina, what's going on? Nothing is going on. My sister is dramatic. Ignore her. But I couldn't ignore it. Something was happening. Something Gina didn't want me to know. I wanted to push, to demand the truth. But I was afraid. Afraid that if I pushed too hard, she'd leave. And then what would I have? An empty house in a foreign country. Proof that I'd been a fool. So I stayed quiet. Swallowed my doubts. Told myself I was overthinking. Told myself that love required trust. But late at night, when Gina's phone would buzz and she'd slip out to the patio to take the call, I'd lie there in the dark, and I'd know. Deep down, I'd know. Something was very wrong. I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of her voice. Low, urgent, coming from outside. I lay still, listening. She was speaking in Cebuano, but I caught the tone. Intimate. The way you talk to someone you're close to. Someone you don't want anyone else to hear. I got out of bed quietly, walked to the window. She was on the patio, phone pressed to her ear, pacing back and forth in her nightgown. The light from her screen illuminated her face. She was smiling. I couldn't understand the words. But then I heard something. A name. Ronnie. She said it twice. Clear as day. Ronnie. My chest tightened. I got back in bed before she came inside. Pretended to be asleep. Felt her slip under the covers next to me. Felt the space between us grow even wider. In the morning, I tried to act normal. Made coffee. Sat on the patio like always. When she came out, I said as casually as I could, "You were on the phone late last night." She didn't even flinch. Was I? I don't remember. Around 2. You were outside. Oh, right, Lita called. She was having problems with her boyfriend. I thought I heard you say a name. Ronnie? For just a second, her eyes widened. Then she laughed. Ronnie is my cousin. Why? Just curious. You're keeping track of my phone calls now? No, Gina. You don't trust me. Her voice was sharp. That's what this is about. I didn't say that. You think I'm doing something behind your back. I'm not accusing you of anything. I just heard the name and Ronnie is family, Byron. Family. We help each other here. That's how it works. She stood up, took her coffee inside and slammed the door. I sat there alone, staring at my cup, feeling like I'd done something wrong, feeling like I was the problem. But the name stuck with me. Ronnie. A few days later, Lita came by again. This time Gina was home. They spoke in rapid Cebuano in the kitchen while I sat in the living room pretending to read. I couldn't follow most of it, but I heard Ronnie's name, multiple times. Then I heard Lita say something, and Gina's response was sharp, angry. Lita's voice dropped, apologetic. When Lita left, I asked Gina, "What was that about?" Nothing. It sounded like an argument. My sister talks too much, that's all. About Ronnie, she spun around. Why do you keep saying that name? Because I keep hearing it. So what? He's my cousin. What do you want me to say? I just want to understand. There's nothing to understand, Byron. You're being paranoid. She grabbed her purse and left. Didn't come back until after dark. I sat in that house, the house I'd paid for, and felt like a stranger. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I got up. Gina was asleep. Her phone was on the nightstand. Charging, screen facing up. I stood there looking at it. I'm not the kind of man who goes through someone's phone. Margaret and I never did that. We trusted each other. But this wasn't trust. This was something else. I picked it up, no password, opened Facebook. Her messages were full of conversations in Cebuano. I scrolled, then I saw it. Ronnie's name. I clicked. The messages went back months, way before I'd even arrived. Photos, dozens of photos. Ronnie and Gina at the beach. Ronnie and Gina at a restaurant. Ronnie in this house. In the living room I'd furnished. On the couch I'd bought. I kept scrolling. My hands were shaking. One photo was dated 3 weeks after I'd moved in. Ronnie sitting at the kitchen table, shirtless, smiling at the camera. Gina had sent it to him with a heart emoji. I clicked on his profile, looked through his photos. He was young, maybe late 20s, muscular, cocky smile. In one photo, he was leaning against a motorcycle. In another, he had his arm around Gina. The caption was in Cebuano, but someone had commented in English. Perfect couple. Posted 4 months ago. I put the phone down. Walked to the bathroom. Stared at myself in the mirror. 71 years old. Thin hair. Wrinkled skin. Sagging everything. What had I expected? That a 27-year-old woman would actually love me? I washed my face. Went back to bed. Gina was still sleeping. Turned away from me. I lay there staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. In the morning she asked, "Are you okay? You look tired. Didn't sleep well. Why not?" I almost said it. Almost asked her about Ronnie, about the photos, about the lies, but the words wouldn't come, because if I asked, she'd have to answer. And once she answered, everything would be over. The house, the dream, the illusion that I mattered to someone. "Just the heat," I said. She nodded, kissed my forehead like I was a child. "You should rest today." Then she got dressed and left. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by everything I'd paid for, and realized something. I had no idea what to do. I'd given her everything. The house was in her name. Philippine law. Foreigners can't own land. I'd signed it all over to her, trusted her completely. I had no legal claim to any of it. I'd built her a life, and now I was just a tenant in my own dream. I was in Bacolod getting supplies, needed to pick up some parts for the water pump that kept breaking. The hardware store was near the market, about 40 minutes from the house. I'd left early, told Gina I'd be back by lunch, but the part they'd promised me wasn't in stock. I spent 2 hours going between shops before I finally found what I needed. It was only 10:30 when I got back. As I pulled up to the house, I saw it. A motorcycle, parked right in front. Glossy red, chrome exhaust pipes, expensive looking. I parked the tricycle and walked toward the door. Heard voices inside, male and female, laughing. My heart started hammering. I opened the door. The first thing I saw was him, sitting at my kitchen table, shirtless, eating pancit from a bowl. My bowl. He looked up, saw me, didn't even flinch. Just kept eating. Gina was at the stove, cooking. She turned, her face went white. "Byron, you're home early." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The man put his fork down, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, leaned back in the chair like he owned it. "Who is this?" I finally managed. Gina set the pan down, walked toward me. "This is Ronnie, my friend. He needed a place to stay for a few days." The words hit me like a fist. "What?" Ronnie stood up, extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, sir." I stared at his hand. Didn't take it. He shrugged, sat back down, started eating again. Gina touched my arm. "Can we talk outside?" "No." My voice came out louder than I'd intended. "We can talk right here. What the hell is going on?" "Byron, please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" "Why there's a stranger in my kitchen." "He's not a stranger. He's my friend." "Your friend?" I looked at Ronnie. He was smirking. Actually smirking. "I've been sending you money for 18 months. I built you a house, and you bring another man here? It's not like that." Gina said quickly. "His landlord kicked him out. He had nowhere to go. My family asked me to help him. It's just for a few days." "A few days?" "Yes, just until he finds another place." I looked around the kitchen, the living room. My eyes landed on a bag in the corner. Men's bag. Clothes spilling out of it. Where is he sleeping? On the couch. The couch. Yes. I felt something break inside me. Not snap. Not shatter. Just a quiet, awful breaking. Like old wood giving way. "I see," I said. "Byron, I see," I repeated. I walked past them, into the bedroom. Closed the door. Sat on the edge of the bed. I could hear them talking. Low voices. Hers pleading. His casual. After a few minutes, I heard footsteps. A knock. "Byron?" Gina's voice. "Can I come in?" "No. Please, let me explain." "You already explained. He's staying here. Just for a few days. I promise." I didn't respond. She tried the door. I'd locked it. "Byron, please don't be like this. I need to be alone. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just helping someone." I lay down on the bed, stared at the ceiling, listened to her walk away. That night, I didn't come out for dinner. I heard them in the living room, the TV on, them talking in Cebuano, laughing. At some point, the house went quiet. I opened the door a crack, peeked out. Ronnie was on the couch, blanket over him, asleep, or pretending to be. I closed the door, lay back down. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the photos I'd seen on Gina's phone, about how comfortable Ronnie looked at my table, about the way Gina's voice had sounded when she was on the phone with him at 2 a.m, about how stupid I'd been. I was 71 years old. I'd worked 40 years, saved every dollar I could, lost the love of my life, and spent half my retirement building a house for a woman who'd just moved her ex-boyfriend in. "A few days," she'd said. But deep down, I knew Ronnie wasn't leaving, and neither was I. Because where would I go? One day became 2. 2 became a week, then 2 weeks. Ronnie didn't leave. He settled in, made himself comfortable, started treating my house like it was his. I'd wake up and he'd be in the kitchen, shirtless, making coffee. My coffee. He'd nod at me. "Morning, sir." I stopped responding. He'd watch TV all day. Loud. Action movies, sports, Filipino shows I didn't understand. He'd laugh at the screen, slap his knee, like he didn't have a care in the world. I'd sit in the bedroom, door closed, trying to read, trying to ignore the noise, but I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't ignore him eating the food I'd paid for. Showering in the bathroom I'd built, sitting on the furniture I'd bought. Gina acted like everything was normal. She'd cook for both of us, serve him first, laugh at his jokes, speak to him in rapid Cebuano. When I'd walk into the room, they'd go quiet, then switch to English. But the English was surface level, polite, fake. "Did you sleep well, Byron? Do you need anything, Mahal?" But her eyes wouldn't meet mine. At night, I'd lie in bed alone. She'd stopped coming to the bedroom, said she needed to sleep on the floor in the living room to keep an eye on Ronnie, to make sure he's okay. I wanted to laugh or scream, but I did neither. I just lay there in the dark, listening to them talk in the next room. One morning I got up early, went to the bathroom, saw a shirt hanging on the hook. Men's shirt. I recognized it. It was mine. One Margaret had bought me for my 65th birthday. I walked into the living room. Ronnie was still asleep on the couch. I stood over him. "Why are you wearing my shirt?" He opened his eyes, blinked, smiled. "Oh, this?" Gina said I could borrow it. "Mine are all dirty." "That's my shirt. I'll wash it and give it back, sir. No problem." He closed his eyes again, rolled over. I stood there, fists clenched, wanting to grab him, shake him, throw him out. But I didn't. I walked back to the bedroom, closed the door, sat on the bed. My hands were shaking. I called Derek, my friend in Dumaguete, expat like me. He'd been in the Philippines for 12 years. Knew how things worked. "Mate," I said when he picked up, "I need advice." "What's wrong? You sound rough." I told him everything. The house, the money, Ronnie moving in, Gina's excuses, the way I felt like a stranger in my own home. Derek was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Byron, you need to leave." "I can't leave. I paid for this house. The house is in her name. You don't own it. You're a guest. And she's making that very clear." "But I gave her everything." "I know, mate. And I'm sorry. But this is a classic setup. You're not the first bloke this has happened to. You won't be the last." "What do I do?" "You pack your things. You get out. You cut your losses before it gets worse. What if she changes? What if Ronnie leaves and things go back to normal?" Derek's voice was gentle but firm. "They won't, Byron. She's already made her choice. And it's not you." I hung up, sat there staring at the wall. I didn't want to believe him, but I knew he was right. That night, I tried one more time. I waited until Ronnie went outside to smoke. Then I sat down next to Gina on the couch. "We need to talk." She didn't look at me. "About what?" "About him. About us." "There's nothing to talk about. Gina, please, I'm asking you." "I need him to leave. He has nowhere to go." "That's not my problem." She turned to me then. Her eyes were cold. "You said you wanted to help my family. He's not your family." "Yes, he is. In the Philippines, we take care of each other." "Maybe you don't understand that." "I understand that I built this house. I paid for everything. I'm asking you to respect that. You gave me this house, Byron. You said it was a gift. It was. But nothing. You can't take it back now just because you're jealous. I'm not jealous." "I'm hurt." She stood up. "He's just going through a hard time. You're a good man, Byron. I know you understand." "I don't understand. I don't understand any of this." She walked to the bedroom, closed the door, left me sitting there alone. Ronnie came back inside, saw me on the couch. "Everything okay, sir?" I didn't answer. He sat down in the chair across from me, turned on the TV, started flipping channels. I wanted to say something, to tell him to get out, to stand up for myself. But the words wouldn't come. I'd never been a confrontational man, never been aggressive. Margaret used to say I was too passive. that I let people walk over me. I always thought she was wrong. But sitting there, watching this stranger make himself at home in the house I'd built, I realized she'd been right all along. I got up, went to the bedroom. The door was locked. I knocked. "Gina," no answer. "Gina, please." Still nothing. I stood there for a minute. Then I walked back to the couch. Lay down. Ronnie glanced at me. "No bed tonight, sir?" I closed my eyes. "No." "That's tough, man." I heard him chuckle. Heard him get up. Heard his footsteps walk toward the bedroom. Heard him knock. Heard Gina open the door. Heard them talking in low voices. Then I heard the door close, and I knew where he was sleeping. And it wasn't the couch. I woke up around 3 in the morning. The house was silent. The kind of silence that's worse than noise because it makes you hear things you don't want to hear. I lay there on the couch staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead. Then I heard it. Voices coming from the bedroom, my bedroom. Her voice, low. His voice, lower. Then laughter. Soft, intimate. The kind of laughter shared between two people who know each other well. My chest felt like someone was standing on it. I sat up, thought about walking over there. Thought about pounding on the door, demanding answers. But what would that accomplish? I already knew the answer. Instead, I stood up, walked outside, sat on the patio steps. The night air was cool, quiet. I could hear dogs barking in the distance, a jeepney rumbling past on the main road. I thought about Margaret, about the life we'd built together. How we'd saved for 30 years to buy our little flat in Gold Coast. How we'd worked side by side, respected each other, loved each other. I thought about how much I'd dishonored her memory by being this stupid, by falling for someone who saw me as nothing more than a wallet. I sat there until the sun came up. When I went back inside, Ronnie was asleep on the couch again. Blanket pulled up to his chin, like he'd been there all night. Gina was in the kitchen making coffee. She didn't look at me. "Good morning," I said. She nodded, poured herself a cup, walked past me into the bedroom, closed the door. I stood there in the kitchen, in the house I'd paid for, surrounded by the furniture I'd bought, and I realized something. I was the guest here, not him. He belonged. I didn't. Later that morning, I waited until Gina left for the market. Then I walked into the living room. Ronnie was awake, scrolling through his phone. "We need to talk," I said. He looked up. "Sure, sir. What's up?" "I want you to leave." He smiled, set his phone down. "That's not really up to you, sir. This is my house." "Is it?" He leaned back, crossed his arms. "Because Gina said it's hers. And last I checked, her name is on the deed, not yours." My hands started shaking. "I paid for it. That was your choice. I'm asking you nicely. Please leave." He stood up, walked toward me. He was taller than me, younger, stronger. He stopped about a foot away. "You seem like a nice guy, sir, but you need to understand something. Gina and I have history. We have a connection. You came in with your money and thought you could buy her, but you can't. She's with me. She's always been with me." "Then why is she with me?" He laughed, actually laughed in my face. "You really don't get it, do you?" I felt tears stinging my eyes. I turned away, walked to the bedroom, locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried. For the first time since Margaret died, I cried, not quiet tears. Big, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside me. I cried for the money I'd lost, for the dignity I'd given up, for the man I used to be, for the life I thought I was building. When Gina came home, I was still in the bedroom. She knocked. "Byron, are you okay?" "No. What's wrong?" "You know what's wrong." Silence. "Then, can we talk about this later?" "There's nothing to talk about." "Byron, I want him out, Gina. Today." Her voice changed, got harder. "He's my family. You don't understand Filipino culture. We help each other. That's how it works here. This isn't about culture. This is about respect. You're being selfish. I'm being selfish." I opened the door. She was standing there, arms crossed. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw it, the coldness in her eyes, the way she was looking at me like I was the problem, like I was the inconvenience. I paid for this house, I said, my voice shaking. I gave you everything. I'm asking you for one thing, to ask him to leave. She stared at me. Then she said, no. What? You gave me this house, Byron. It's mine. It's in my name. If you don't like how I run things, you can leave. The words hit me like a slap. You're serious? Yes. You'd choose him over me. I'm not choosing anyone. I'm just not letting you control me. I'm not trying to control you. You're trying to make me pick between you and my family. And I won't do that. I stood there, speechless. She turned and walked away. I heard her talking to Ronnie in the living room, heard them laughing. I closed the door, locked it. I sat down on the bed. The room was spinning. My heart was pounding. I felt like I was going to be sick. She was right. The house was in her name. I had no legal claim. She could do whatever she wanted, and there was nothing I could do about it. I'd given her everything, and now I had nothing. I packed a small bag, just the essentials, clothes, passport, wallet, left everything else behind. I couldn't stay in that house another night. Couldn't sit there watching him take over the life I'd paid for. Couldn't listen to Gina's excuses anymore. I walked into the living room. Ronnie was on the couch. Gina was in the kitchen. I'm leaving, I said. Gina looked up. Where are you going? Hotel. Bacalhau. Byron, don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I can't stay here. She walked over, touched my arm. Please. Let's talk about this. I pulled away. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. I didn't choose anything. I'm just helping a friend. He's not your friend, Gina. She dropped her hand. Her expression hardened. Fine. Leave then. I looked at her, waiting for something. An apology. A plea for me to stay. Something. But there was nothing. Just cold silence. I picked up my bag, walked out the door, got in a tricycle, told the driver to take me to Bacalhau. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house, my house, the blue trim, the garden I'd planned, the life I'd built. Ronnie was standing in the doorway, watching me leave, smiling. I turned away, stared out the window as we drove through the barangay, past the neighbors who'd smiled and waved at me just weeks ago, past the Sorry store where Gina used to work, past the life I thought I had. I checked into a cheap hotel near the plaza, bare walls, hard bed, a bathroom with a broken shower. It cost 600 pesos a night, about 16 Australian dollars. I sat on the edge of the bed and called Derek. I left, I said when he answered. Good, he said. Now what? Now you figure out what you want to do. Do you want to try to fight for the house? Can I? Technically, yes. You could hire a lawyer. Try to prove financial contribution. But it's expensive, and it takes years, and even then you probably won't win. So I just lose everything. You lose the house, but you get yourself back. I didn't know what he meant by that. I sat there in that hotel room for 3 days, barely ate, barely slept, just stared at the walls, replaying everything in my head. Every conversation, every lie, every moment I'd ignored the red flags. On the 4th day, Derek called me. I talked to a friend of mine, lawyer. Good guy. His name is Attorney Mendoza. He's willing to meet with you, no charge, just to talk through your options. What options do I have? Just meet with him, mate. See what he says. The next day, I took a jeepney to Attorney Mendoza's office. It was in a small building near the city hall. He was in his late 40s, kind eyes, firm handshake. Mr. Byron, he said, please sit. I sat. He poured me water, sat across from me. Derek told me about your situation. I'm sorry. Can I get my house back? He sighed. The house is in her name. Under Philippine law, foreigners cannot own land. You knew this when you purchased it, yes? Yes, but I paid for it. I understand. And morally, you are right to feel wronged. Legally, however, it is more complicated. So I can't do anything. You could file a case, claim unjust enrichment, try to prove that she used your money with no intention of honoring your relationship. But these cases are difficult. They take years. and they're expensive. I felt my chest tighten. So, she gets away with it. I'm sorry, Mr. Byron, but yes, most likely. I sat back, felt the weight of it settle over me. Attorney Mendoza leaned forward. There is one thing you could try. What? The barangay, the local captain. In the Philippines, we have a system of community mediation. If you bring this to the barangay captain, he may be able to pressure her. Not legally, but socially. Shame is powerful here. Shame, yes. If the community knows what she did, it reflects badly on her family. The barangay captain can call a meeting, force her to face what she's done. Will that get me my money back? No, but it might get the other man out of your house. I looked at him. That's all I want, he nodded. Then let's try. 2 days later, Derek drove me back to Barangay San Isidro. We went to the barangay hall, a small concrete building with a tin roof and a sign out front. Inside, an older man sat behind a desk. He looked up when we walked in. Magandang hapon, he said. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, I said. I need to speak to the barangay captain. I am the captain, Kuya Joel. What can I do for you? I sat down. Told him everything. The house, the money, Ronnie, Gina's refusal to make him leave. Kuya Joel listened, didn't interrupt. When I finished, he nodded slowly. This is shameful, he said. For her to bring another man into a home built by someone who trusted her. This brings shame to our barangay. Can you help me? I can call a mediation. Bring her here. Bring the man. We will talk. And then what? If he is reasonable, he will leave. If she is reasonable, she will ask him to leave. And if they're not reasonable? Kuya Joel's expression hardened. Then I will make it clear that they are not welcome to behave this way here. I nodded. Thank you. He picked up his phone, made a call, spoke in rapid Cebuano, hung up. Tomorrow, he said, 10 in the morning, everyone will be here. I left the barangay hall feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks, a small flicker of control. It wasn't much, but it was something. The next morning, Derek drove me back to the barangay hall. My hands were shaking the whole way. You don't have to do this, mate, Derek said. You can just walk away, go home, forget all of it. I can't forget it. I know, but confronting them won't change what happened. Maybe not, but I need to try. We pulled up to the hall. There were already people inside. I saw Gina through the window, sitting in a chair, arms crossed. Ronnie next to her, casual, legs spread, looking bored. Lita was there too, and Mang Ernie, Gina's father. He looked uncomfortable, kept his eyes on the floor. Derek squeezed my shoulder. I'll wait outside. You've got this. I walked in. Kuya Joel was sitting at the head of the table. He gestured for me to sit. I did. Across from Gina and Ronnie, Kuya Joel cleared his throat, started speaking in Cebuano. I didn't understand all of it, but I caught the tone. Serious. Authoritative. Then he switched to English. We are here to mediate a dispute, he said. Mr. Byron has brought concerns about the behavior in his home. Gina, you are here to respond. Ronnie, you are here to explain yourself. Ronnie shrugged. I don't have anything to explain. Kuya Joel's eyes narrowed. You are staying in a house that was built by a foreigner who trusted this woman. A house he paid for, and you are treating it like your own. This is disrespectful. She invited me, Ronnie said. She has that right. It is not about rights. It is about respect. It is about haya. Shame, Gina spoke up. Kuya Joel, with respect, I am helping a friend. That is all. A friend, Kuya Joel repeated. Is that what you call him? She didn't answer. Kuya Joel turned to me. Mr. Byron, tell us, what do you want? I looked at Gina, then at Ronnie, then back at Kuya Joel. I want him out of my house. That's all I want. Ronnie laughed. It's not your house, old man. Kuya Joel slammed his hand on the table. You will not speak like that here. Ronnie went quiet, but his smirk didn't fade. Kuya Joel turned to Gina. This man built you a house. He trusted you. He gave you everything. And you bring another man into that house? This is wrong, you know this. Gina's jaw tightened. I didn't do anything wrong. You are shaming your family, Kuya Joel said. He looked at Mang Ernie. You agree with this? Mang Ernie didn't look up, just shook his head slightly. Kuya Joel turned back to Ronnie. You will leave. Today. I don't think so, Ronnie said. I think you will leave, Kuya Joel repeated. His voice was steel. Or I will involve the police. I will tell them you are trespassing, that the owner of the home, Gina, is allowing illegal activity. I will make sure everyone in this barangay knows what kind of man you are. Ronnie's smirk faded. He looked at Gina. She looked away. Fine, Ronnie said. He stood up. I'll leave, but this is bullshit. He walked out, slammed the door behind him. The room went silent. I looked at Gina, waited for her to say something, to apologize, to acknowledge what she'd done. She stared at the table. Are you happy now? She said quietly. No, I said. I'm not happy. I'm heartbroken. She looked up at me then. For a second I saw something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe regret, but it was gone as fast as it came. Can I go? She asked Kuya Joel. He nodded. She stood up, walked toward the door. Lita stood up too. Byron, she said softly. I'm sorry. I nodded. I know. She followed Gina out. Mang Ernie stayed seated. He finally looked at me. I'm sorry, he said in broken English. I didn't know. I didn't know she'd do this. It's not your fault, I said. He stood up, shook my hand, then left. I sat there with Kuya Joel. Is it over? I asked. The man is gone, Kuya Joel said. But the house is still hers. I cannot change that. Can I get my money back? He shook his head. That is a court matter. Very difficult, very expensive. I am sorry. I nodded. I'd known the answer before I asked. Thank you, I said. For what you did. He stood up, shook my hand. You are a good man, Mr. Byron. You deserved better. I walked out of the barangay hall. Derek was waiting by the truck. How'd it go? Ronnie's gone. That's something. Yeah. We drove past the house on the way out of the barangay. I looked at it through the window. The blue trim, the garden, the dream I'd built. I didn't stop, didn't get out. I just looked. And then I turned away. I flew back to Gold Coast 2 weeks later, sat in the plane staring out the window, watching the Philippines disappear below me. I kept thinking about the house, about Gina, about Ronnie, about every decision I'd made that led me to this point. I rented a small unit near Burley Beach, 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, nothing like the house I'd built, but it was mine. Or at least, I was paying for it honestly. The first few weeks were hard. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, disoriented, reaching for someone who wasn't there. I'd make coffee in the morning and set out 2 cups before I remembered. I was alone. One night, I opened Facebook, told myself I wouldn't look, but I did. I went to Gina's profile, scrolled through her photos. There he was, Ronnie, back in the house, sitting on the couch, smiling at the camera. One photo was dated 3 days after I left. The caption was in Cebuano, but I understood the heart emojis. I closed the app, deleted Facebook from my phone. I didn't need to see it anymore. I started seeing a counselor. My daughter suggested it. She'd flown down from Brisbane when she heard what happened, sat with me in my tiny kitchen, holding my hand. Dad, you have to talk to someone. I'm fine. You're not fine. You lost half your savings. You were humiliated. You need help processing this. So I went. Once a week, Tuesday afternoons, a woman named Dr. Patel. She was kind, patient. She let me talk without judgment. Why do you think you ignored the red flags? She asked one session. I don't know. Yes, you do. I thought about it because I was lonely and because I wanted to believe someone could love me. Someone could love you, Byron. But you have to love yourself first. You have to believe you're worth more than what you can provide financially. It was a hard truth, but it was true. I'd spent 18 months trying to buy love, thinking that if I was generous enough, giving enough, selfless enough, someone would see my value. But Gina never saw my value. She saw my wallet, and I let her. That was on me. Some days were easier than others. I started volunteering at a local charity, Meals on Wheels, delivering food to elderly people who couldn't leave their homes. It felt good, helping people who actually needed help, not people who were using me. I reconnected with my daughter, started seeing her more. She'd drive down on weekends and we'd have breakfast together. She never said I told you so, never made me feel stupid. She just listened. One Saturday she asked, "Do you regret it, going to the Philippines?" I thought about it. I regret how it ended. But I don't regret trying. You loved her. I thought I did. But I don't think it was love. I think it was desperation. She squeezed my hand. "You're not desperate anymore, Dad." "No, I'm not." Derek still called every week. "Just checking in, mate." "I'm okay, Derek." "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm okay." And slowly I was. I started walking along the beach in the mornings, early, before the crowds, just me and the ocean and the pelicans. I'd sit on the sand with my coffee and watch the surfers. I thought about Margaret, about the life we'd built together, about how much I missed her. But I also thought about how I dishonored her memory by being so reckless with my heart, with our savings, with the life we'd worked so hard to build. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the ocean one morning, like she could hear me. "I'm so sorry," but I also forgave myself. Slowly, one day at a time, I learned that loneliness makes you do stupid things, makes you ignore red flags, makes you accept treatment you'd never accept if you were thinking clearly. I learned that generosity without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. I learned that you can't buy someone's affection, you can only rent it, and the rent is always too high. Most importantly, I learned that I deserved better. I deserved honesty, respect, a partner who saw me as more than a bank account, and if I couldn't find that, I'd rather be alone, because being alone and honest is better than being together and used. It's been 6 months now. I'm sitting on Burley Beach, early morning, coffee in hand. The sun is just coming up over the water. I come here most mornings now. It's become my routine. Walk, coffee, watch the sunrise. Think. My daughter calls it my meditation. I call it survival. I've started attending a men's grief group every Thursday night. Small group, guys like me, widowers, divorced men who lost themselves somewhere along the way and are trying to find their way back. We don't talk much, mostly just sit, listen. But sometimes someone shares. Last week, a man named Graham talked about how he'd sent money to a woman in Thailand for 2 years. Never met her. She disappeared the moment he stopped sending. "I feel like such an idiot," he said. I told him he wasn't an idiot. He was lonely. We all were. That's what these women count on. Derek called this morning. "How you holding up, mate?" "Good. Better. Thought about going back?" "No. Not even for closure?" "I got my closure, Derek. Ronnie got evicted. That's all I needed. You know he's probably back there now, right?" "I know." "And that doesn't bother you?" I thought about it. "No, not anymore. The house is hers. He's her problem now, not mine." Derek was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You sound different, stronger. I feel different." "Good. That's good, mate." After we hung up, I sat there looking at the ocean, thinking about everything I'd lost, the money, the house, the dream, but also thinking about what I'd gained, my dignity, my self-respect, the knowledge that I deserved better. That was worth more than any house. I thought about Gina sometimes, wondered if she ever felt guilty, if she ever thought about what she'd done, if she ever regretted it. Probably not. People like that don't feel regret. They justify, they rationalize, they blame everyone but themselves. But I didn't hate her. I used to. In those first few weeks, I'd lie awake at night, anger burning in my chest. But the anger faded. Now, I just felt sad. Sad that she'd never know what it's like to love someone honestly. Sad that she'd chosen survival over integrity. Sad that she'd live her whole life using people and never building anything real. That was her prison, not mine. I finished my coffee, stood up, started walking back toward my unit, past the joggers, the early morning swimmers, the other old men sitting on benches, watching the world wake up. I thought about Margaret, about how she'd been gone for 6 years now, about how much I still missed her, but also about how I'd finally learned the lesson she'd tried to teach me when she was alive. "You're too soft, Byron," she used to say. "You let people take advantage of you." "I'm just being kind," I'd argue. "Kindness without boundaries is weakness," she'd say. I used to think she was wrong, but she wasn't. She was trying to protect me, trying to teach me that I mattered, that my value wasn't in what I could give, but in who I was. I wished I'd listened sooner, but I was listening now. I got back to my unit, made breakfast, toast and eggs, sat by the window looking out at the street. I had plans today. Volunteer shift at noon, dinner with my daughter tonight, men's group tomorrow. Small things, simple things, but they were mine, and they were real. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. It was Lita, Gina's sister. "Hi, Byron. I'm sorry to bother you." I wanted to say I'm sorry for what my sister did. "You didn't deserve that. She is with Ronnie now. They fight all the time. My father is ashamed. I thought you should know you were right. I'm sorry we didn't help you." I read it twice. Then I typed back, "Thank you, Lita. I appreciate you saying that. I hope you're doing okay." She responded immediately, "I'm trying. I want to leave here someday. I don't want to be like my sister." "You won't be," I wrote. "You're already different. You have a conscience." We messaged for a few more minutes. Then I said goodbye, put the phone down, looked out the window again. I thought about what she'd said, that Gina and Ronnie fought all the time. Part of me felt vindicated, like karma had finally caught up to her. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of thinking about it, tired of caring. I wanted to move forward, not forgetting, but not dwelling either. I opened my laptop, started looking at volunteer opportunities. Maybe something with animals, or helping at a food bank. Something that mattered, something that made me feel useful. Because that's what I'd learned through all of this. I didn't need someone to make me feel useful. I didn't need validation from a woman 44 years younger than me. I just needed to be useful, to matter, to contribute. And I could do that on my own. Later that night, I walked back to the beach, sunset this time. The sky was orange and pink, beautiful. I stood at the water's edge, waves lapping at my feet. I thought about the man I'd been 18 months ago, desperate, broken, willing to give anything for a chance at love. I thought about the man I was now, still broken, maybe, but healing, stronger, wiser. I thought about Ronnie getting evicted from that house, about Kuya Joel telling him to leave, about the small victory I'd won. It wasn't justice, it wasn't revenge, but it was something. It was me standing up for myself, even if it was too late, even if I'd already lost everything. I'd stood up, and that mattered. I turned away from the ocean, started walking back, and as I walked, I whispered to myself the words I'd been trying to believe for 6 months. I'm 71 years old. I don't have time to waste on people who see me as a wallet. I'd rather be alone and honest than together and used. I meant it now. I really meant it. Ronnie got evicted, but I got my dignity back. And in the end, that's the only thing that mattered.